Our next speaker is going to be Bob Ledwith with Local 46, the Metallic Latherers and Ironworkers, and a good friend of my friend Bill Hofeld, and we'll see how what Bob has to say.
Well, thank you, Lou. When Lou asked us to speak on this subject of infrastructure, I'm just like everybody else that says, that could be possibly very boring. But the bottom line when I began to think about it is that we do have a national and regional crisis that we must loudly raise our voices in conjunction with each other to try to solve the problems. After all, infrastructure is society's arterial circulatory system. This is how we get about, this is how we get the products to us, and this is how we survive today as a modern society. So when I looked at the word infrastructure, I went to the dictionary, but then I began to write some of the things on how it affects our daily lives, and it's a legion of things that we depend upon, but we don't pay much attention to. For instance, our water supply. Currently, we're finishing a job up in the Bronx on a water filtration plant. There's also an ultraviolet plant up in Westchester County that we're building. The traditional water supply system in our city is constantly, the pipes are breaking, and we see the crisis that's involved in traffic and also in discomfort to our population. So basically, our water system has to be tremendously upgraded. Our sewerage, we take for granted the sewerage system, but that's a complex system that has to be constantly modernized and observed and make sure that we take care of business. We have reservoirs that give us the fresh, clean water. But we take it for granted that the water is always going to be there when we turn the tap. Is it always going to be there? Pumps and street pipe delivery systems of our clean water. This infrastructure is absolutely necessary for the survival of a modern-day society. We go into power, the production and delivery of electric power. We have a huge bias against nuclear power plants, and yet we know we need them for the future. We have fossil fuel plants that have to be retrofitted to clean up the air the dirty air that they produce. And we have the renewables that people keep talking about and talking about and talking about, and nothing happens. Part of our infrastructure is the local delivery and transmission systems. The things we take for granted again. In New York City, we're blessed in Manhattan to have everything underground. In the outer boroughs, we mostly have it on poles. Just think of what that means if anything goes wrong with that and we have no power. We must pay attention to what's going on around us. We have the national power grid. The power grid itself, everybody keeps talking about it, but again, nothing is happening. We just sit and we listen and we wait, and we get deeper into the 21st century, and we're looking more and more like a third world nation unless we do something about it. The communication systems, we take them for granted. We have our telephone systems, cable TV, the wireless towers that give us the wonderful mobility that we have today. We have the satellites that give us GPS and other things. These all have to be maintained and improved every day, every week, every month, every year. Our airports, as was alluded to before by Chris. Traffic control. We have archaic traffic control systems. We're not measuring up to a great nation and what our needs are. Air freight. Today, much of our freight is delivered by air, but our capacity to send it and receive it is limited. And if we want to grow as a nation and remain the #1 power in the world, we have to pay attention to all of these things around us. And of course, personal travel, being the 40th plane waiting to take off, is always been terrible for all of us.
You have to ask Kara about that.
Oh, okay. Kara? Okay. Our airports, the personal travel, air freight, we mentioned it. The roads and bridges and tunnels that must be maintained and built and created, and new venues. The mass transit systems that we depend on, and many of us got here today. The railroads and the terminals are all infrastructure and things we must watch. The schools that our children go to and the hospitals that take care of us when we're ill are all part of the infrastructure. The waterways, the piers and ports and dams that provide us with our fresh water. The maintenance of navigable waterways, the dredging to make sure that ships can come in and come out, the rivers that they ply on, and the canals that they use. This is America's work. We built this nation with manifest destiny from coast to coast. We were proud at one time about who we were and what we could achieve. When Kennedy said in 1961 we're going to go to the moon, by 1969 we went to the moon. Something has happened to America, and something has happened to all of us, and it's not very good. as I look at it, there was always an unwritten social compact among Americans, that we could achieve anything, that we could grasp for the stars and we could say that's going to be ours and we're going to achieve it. But again, something happened. And I believe what happened was 1980, in an election where the American people made a decision and from that point on have changed. It became a nation of greed, not a nation of need. We didn't want to share anymore. We were told that the government was the enemy. We were told that the people of the United States would just survive if they just did for themselves and didn't care about their neighbor. And today, 30 years later, we suffer from an infrastructure that's crumbling, and we all look around and say, how the hell did this happen? Well, it happened because we changed our philosophical bent, and we believed that the government was the bad, and private enterprise, unbridled, would be the good. Well, we see the results of that in the Gulf of Mexico. We see the results of that on Wall Street. And I think every one of us in this room is suffering today. So do we have the political will to change? Do we have the wherewithal to say enough is enough? Can we face the challenges of the future and dream for our children like our predecessor did and say, America's a place of growth. America's a place where my children are going to have it better than I do, and I'm going to take care of my infrastructure. And finally, when you cross a bridge and you think of infrastructure or use any facility, just remember something. A union building tradesman who's trained, who served an apprenticeship, is the best person to put that bridge together. Because if that bridge is not put together properly, you might not like the consequences. Thank you very much.